Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the WrestleWatch Podcast, the only podcast where we discuss free agency in the world of professional wrestling. I am Ryan.
And I am Doug.
Uh,
Happy Mariah May week, everybody.
yes, happy end of May. It is the
Yes.
end of May. Forever. We're never going to have another May.
Yep.
Um, it was really a May December kind of relationship there.
Well, and you know what? We're going to be talking about a lot of things this week, and we'll get to Mariah May. We'll get to a lot of things. I think we have a lot to discuss this week. We took the last week off just because uh, there wasn't a whole lot that happened. There wasn't a whole lot to discuss. That has not been the case this week. A lot of people jumping around, a lot of contract news. It's been a busy, hectic week in that regard. So we'll be discussing some things.
Hmm. Yeah. So how about we kick it off with just doing a little whoop-de-doo of last week's tracker. As a reminder, we updated our terminology now so that we go from certain all the way down to remote chance of the person jumping.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah,
So
go ahead.
for the people who are not watching on video, what this basically means is the order on which we determine that a talent is jumping or not now goes from most likely to jump to least likely to jump. It is certain is the highest, and then it is likely, then probable. Toss up would be in the middle, a 50-50 shot. And then the ones that are, you know, staying or not jumping, those are going to be possible, unlikely, and then the least likely to jump would be remote on our tier list. So
Yes.
unless if you are lower than remote, you have a remote chance, then you're probably getting removed from the tier list or not going on in the first place.
Yeah, if there is way too small of a chance or enough doubt in us, we just don't have the person on the tier list on our free agency tracker here. So without much further ado, let's do the biggest story, the headline story of the day. Actually, no, we're not. We're gonna do Thekla first because she
Yeah.
is a confirmed jump to AEW. She appeared on this week's episode of Dynamite after some weeks of teasing with little cute spiders, and I don't like spiders, so that means a lot coming from me. Calling on our screens, and she came out, attacked Jamie Hayter. It seems like it's a fun trope now that Jamie Hayter always gets um, her segments
Her
interrupted.
promos cut off. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so Tekla is in AEW now. Do you have any thoughts about that, Doug?
I have been very, very high on her for a long time. I've been someone who has been adamant about not taking her off this tier list too, because I felt that it was going to happen eventually. She's just too good to she's too good to just stay in Japan. And I don't mean that disparagingly to Stardom. It's just that she's also said that she wants to explore other options and is open to this. So it's only a matter of time before most people can avoid, taking the money because she's going to make more money in America. And she's got a great look. She's genuinely great in the ring. And she's, really, really charismatic. Like she's like a total package. I think that she is going to do. I'm really, really high on her. Like maybe I'm crazy, but I've been one of the people who said that, if you had to choose between retaining Mariah May
Mm-hmm.
and picking up Thekla, I'm picking up Thekla. Like I'm that high on her. And I think that she's going to be used very well. I think putting her against Jamie Hayter right off the bat is perfect because she's someone who will highlight how great she could be. I don't know that I like that match in the sense that, I kind of feel like neither one should lose right now.
Does it feel
But
kind of like when Jay White came in and his first feud was against Ricky Starks?
yeah, just yeah, it's a you could have. I feel like they could have picked someone else to have her. I mean, I'm not saying you couldn't do this feud eventually, but I just feel like Tekla shouldn't lose right off the bat,
Yeah.
and Jamie shouldn't lose coming off of her, uh, her match against Mercedes. Um, if I had to pick which one would win, it'd be Tekla because I think I think Jamie is a little bit more ironclad and can maybe recover a little bit better since Tekla's not really established. But I still wouldn't have done that match. But regardless, I think that I think Tekla's gonna do great. I think she's gonna do fantastic. I think the start of the I think her entrance and her debut was pretty good. Um,
Mm.
I don't like her theme song,
Mm-hmm.
but I also didn't like her Stardom theme song, and they're basically like the same thing. And but that's just a me. I think it's a me problem because it seems like everyone else loves that thing. I don't know. I
Uh,
guess that's all I have to say about Tekla.
so you feel that Thekla is more than replacement value for Mariah May?
I absolutely do. I think that I if I had to pick between the two, I'm choosing Tekla. I think that listen, I like Mariah May. I think she is a really good prospect. She's young, she's talented, she's very crisp.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I would say she's outstanding, but she's a good solid hand. And I do think that putting her with Tony Storm was like a great idea in the sense that I think Tony did everything to elevate her in terms of character work. Um, I don't know that Mariah would have had much more to do in AEW after this, and frankly, I don't think it was ever going to reach the heights that her Tony Storm feud did. I just think that you know it she peaked very very high with that. So I think everything after this would have just looked kind of limited
Mm-hmm.
and kind of less than. So they did a great job of using Mariah May while they had her, and I think that uh, letting her go is fine, and Tekla is going to be great.
Well, how about we kind of transition there into the Mariah May talk of it all? As being alluded to, Mariah May will be leaving AEW. That has now been reported by multiple outlets, including Fightful, Pro Wrestling Insider. Um, the thing that's interesting with this to me is that it's the comments are kind of she's expected to go to WWE. There were people asking her agent what was going on about her contract, and both AEW and her agent were saying that she's still under AEW contract despite being taken off the roster and headed to WWE. Um, if one were to do a just add 2 years or like subtract 2 years to where we are now, it would be still that she would still at least be under contract at least into July, possibly into September at AEW,
Mm-hmm.
unless someone is feeling magnanimous, which in this circumstance I do not think would be the case about releasing somebody early.
Is that from July? Is that July when she debuted, or is that when we
No,
had a belief that she signed?
the belief is that she had signed in July of 23 and that um, she was allowed to do the 5-star Grand Prix by Tony Khan afterwards. And then after that is when she came to AEW. So it
Okay,
was kind
because
of
I
like
do.
doing business on the way out with a partner.
Yeah, I'm asking because I do remember when Mariah signed. Like there, we knew she was signed or had an inkling that she had signed long before she came
We
over. So I
we
just
yeah,
wanted.
we knew like I would say definitely by October of 23, maybe November. Um, but the interesting thing to me is that nobody has been able to get word of when specifically the contract is actually over. Um, and I think that somebody was like, "Oh yeah, like this is a strategy by her agent to try to still make there be some intrigue about when she'll debut." And I'm like, "No, no, it's because like they know that if they lie about it, AEW will just come out and say, no, 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 here is the exact contract date."
Yeah.
Like they can't play any games with it. They can't be cute or coy about it. Like, um, they just have to run it exactly like it happened and is happening. I'm seeing a bunch of people who are trying to act like they had known for months that there's one person who was saying, "Oh yeah, I knew before Revolution that she wasn't staying," and then somebody else I believe it was Dave Meltzer said, well, of course, when she signed, they knew that she wasn't going to stay. And I'm like, guys, come on. Like, if you knew, and if they knew, she would not have signed to AEW. Like,
Listen, I will say this, regardless of what the uh the substitute farmer says on Twitter, or the backup farmer, if you will. Um, let me just point one thing out, and that is that we had heard, I think it was from Fightful, and I feel like this had to be like at least 4 months ago, maybe longer, that someone within AEW believed that she was leaving. And I have been hung up on that for months. I've pointed that out constantly on this show, that she was believed to be leaving, according to someone in AEW. That was reported by either Fightful or PWI. I can't remember which one. But regardless, I've discussed that countless times. I still believe that was the biggest tell for me. That's why I've always been leaning that she's going to be going. We've had her at toss up, but I've always said, I'm leaning towards jump. I've always been leaning towards jump. I do think for that reason, there was perhaps some knowledge of that. But yes, I agree. There's a lot of people that are now coming out of the woodwork and saying, oh, yeah, I knew she was going. This, blah, blah, blah. This was well known. It's like, well, you could have said that. Or at least you could have, said it a little bit louder, because they're not doing it. They weren't doing it then, and they're doing it now.
You would have put your byline to it.
Yeah, absolutely. But I do think if you read between the lines on some of these earlier reports, it did look like she was perhaps jumping. And my only question and concern is she jumping for less money? Is she pulling a Stephanie Vaquer?
I would have to presume. So the phrasing that I would want to think about it with is it's not necessarily about if she will be taking less money than her current contract, but less money than the alternative contract, because I think that she will be making more money than she currently is.
Yes.
That, like, it would be silly for her to leave if she's going to make less money than she currently is.
And now let me ask this, though. Let's say that the rumor, let's say it is true that she gave them ample notice.
Yeah, I'm looking at it all right now. It looks like it was mid-March that the first droplets were coming out about this.
Okay. So let's say that, she told AEW early on that, hey, I'm not coming back.
Yeah.
If that is true, which it might be, let's say it was earlier than that. Let's say if it was really between the second and third match, because that would have been what, maybe January?
No, the second match was February. That was at Grandstand, Australia, which is February 15th, I believe.
Okay. And then the third match was at
Revolution, which was the first or second weekend of March, yeah.
Okay. So let's say it's between those two regardless.
Mm-hmm.
They probably, and let's say her contract's not up till July. It's possible that she let them know that she was not resigning long before they were going to offer her another contract.
Yeah.
It's if that's the case, and she let them know, it's possible that they just didn't give her another offer too.
It is possible, yeah.
So in that regard, we may not actually know if AEW could have or would have outbid.
Mm-hmm.
I suspect we'll probably find out or hear something soon, similar to what we heard with Stephanie in terms of, if a contract was offered. I just hope that, because I think I want to reiterate this. When people take less money to go to the industry leader, the market leader, and essentially give them a talent discount, that's bad for the industry at large. That's bad for labor at large. And that's something that I hope is not something that becomes a tradition or a fad, because that's going to be something that that WWE is going to start leaning on and
Well,
start.
yeah. So the way that it makes me think about, so in the they're in other industries, in other freelance industries. Like specifically, I'm thinking about concert tour merchandising. Um, so it has always been a thing back to the days of Noah and Moses, that when there's a concert, the guy that has the merch table has a tip jar out, right?
Yes,
So that's never not been a thing, right?
correct.
Okay, so how is a tour merch person a tipped employee though, for wage purposes? The answer is no. They're paid a flat rate, and then tips are on top, right?
Sounds right.
So then there are people that obviously have such jobs who do not work at the booth because the tour is so big that it is impossible for them to sell for the tour anymore, right? It becomes a logistical job. So now they're just being guaranteed a certain rate of money, and there's no bonus per se, right?
Mm-hmm.
An ancillary bonus that is not given by the employer, right? So that is my comparison point there, is you could take a job for less guaranteed money, but a possibility of making even more money off of ancillary bonuses that are not paid by your employer. Although, of course, it's not great that you're not getting guaranteed that money, but there is the possibility that you will get more money. Or you can take a guaranteed contract that is on paper more money directly from your employer. And that is essentially what's happening here. There are people that like the latter because there is security and there's guarantees. There are people that like the other scenario where they have to they have the potential to earn even more money via other means. Now, I know, of course, with AEW that you could also take bookings with other promotions and things like that much more easily. But I would presume that people that are going to WWE, despite the on paper money difference, are looking at the potential on top of partnerships with advertisers and things of that nature.
Yes, I would agree.
So that's why I think that, like, it's hard to say that it's necessarily less money. I think though that, like, you have to buy in to the idea that you are going to be a big deal and are going to earn that money. You're going to get those opportunities to earn that additional money. And I think that like Mariah May, if she is being told, we're going to use her as a world champion, you're going to go to the main roster immediately and all those kinds of things, I think that he would get those opportunities,
Mm-hmm.
Like Cody Rhodes got those opportunities, right?
Yes, okay, I agree. But then also, like, you look at someone like Cody Rhodes, he probably got more money.
Yeah,
So
well, Jade Cargill got less money, got less guaranteed money. However, potentially more on the back end from ancillary contracts and like from partnerships. So that's the game that you have to play if you're somebody that's high on the card. If you're somebody that's lower on the card, I don't think that you can, it might be a little bit delusional if you are somebody that's going to NXT thinking to yourself, well, like, this is a pipeline for the future. I mean, like, I get that logic, but like, it's not as guaranteed and it's not as immediate.
Yeah, it's true.
So yeah.
It's tricky. It is a tricky situation though, because you don't know what a lot of these ancillary, opportunities are and what they really, and a lot of times they're just kind of like, oh, I think I'm gonna have more opportunities to do outside things if I'm at WWE
Hmm.
because reasons. And then there's no real way to pin that down. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Like what are those things? And it's like a lot of times they're not even real. Just people just assume this. And I think that's dangerous. Um, I think that. Well, did you see the Happy Gilmore 2 trailer?
Yeah. You know who was featured in almost every shot?
One Maxwell Jacob Friedman.
Yep. You know
You
who
know who
was
was
featured in exactly one shot?
Becky Lynch in it? It looked like Seth Rollins, to be honest.
I think that was Austin Theory.
Yeah, some people are saying it's Austin Theory, and it's like, man, he looked like Seth Rollins. But
But
um,
she's playing herself.
yeah. So I don't know if that it probably just a cameo, right?
That is a cameo at a golf tournament as people that are in the crowd. That is what that was. And the other one is a full role acting in a motion picture.
Yeah. So it's a little different.
Yeah.
And yeah, he seemed to have a pretty sizable role.
He does. He does. He's one of Happy Gilmore's sons.
Yes. Well, good for him.
Yeah. But yeah, so I guess I have a question here for you about Mariah May. A bit of a Moneyball scenario, if you
Oh,
will.
okay.
So, you're AEW, and you're looking at the loss of Mariah May, who is somebody that, even though it sounds like you're not the highest on her, um, she was a former world champion. She did have a integral part in your biggest budget money making storyline in your women's division ever. She has a lot of potential ahead of her. She has a lot of years ahead of her. How do you replace her? Who is the replacement for Mariah May, in your opinion? Do you think that they have the pieces already in their locker room, or do you think that they need to go shopping more?
I think they probably have it. I mean, I'll be honest. They they have a pretty solid women's roster as is.
Mm-hmm.
I think looking at the obvious comparison is going to be the other Stardom girl that they just brought in, and that's Thekla. Um, I think that Thekla is more charismatic, if not, I'll just say as charismatic. We'll be diplomatic here. Just as charismatic. I think she's better in the ring, and I think that she will fill the same kind of slotting in terms of where she'd be at on the card, where she'll just sort of be this upper mid carder who maybe eventually be a title contender. That's essentially where Mariah May was slotted. She's not the same character, obviously, but I don't know if you necessarily need that. I don't know if you need that character. Do you need the what she is? I don't think you do. I mean, they also just recently brought in Megan Bain, and she's being presented in a very, very strong way. You have uh, potentially a tag division about to launch that can also provide a lot of opportunities. So I feel that in the aggregate, they've probably already rebuilt whatever Mariah May was going to be. And I honestly think they did it in day one with Thekla.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that I'm as high on Thekla, relatively speaking, to Mariah May in ring. But I think that her artistry, her artistic mind is probably, I think behind the scenes, she is going to be extremely valuable to AEW.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we have a comment here from TC in chat saying the replacement is elevating Mercedes to the top heel role. Mercedes, Bane, Thekla, and the return of Sky Blue are more than enough. Sky Blue was pretty surprisingly good last night against Mina Shirakawa. Somebody was likened it to that Mina is not a. They called her a floor raiser. So she isn't pushing up the ceiling of what the division is capable of necessarily, but she is certainly providing a good dance partner to any and all to bring the floor up of the in-ring quality.
Yeah, it's honestly that collision last night in general was very good. But I think that that is probably a good observation that a lot of people have made about the women's division in AEW, and that's that for a long time they had some great talent, but it just was very, very thin in terms of people that could go. And I don't think that's necessarily the problem
Yeah,
anymore. Now
yeah,
they have a pretty deep bench, and that allows them to kind of do a lot of different things. And I think the tag division will help with that as well to kind of give more people something to do. People like Deonna Purrazzo, for example, she'll have a little something to do as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about her in a bit. But yeah, that's
yeah. I feel like with AEW in general that they went through a phase where they had to bring in a lot of floor raisers, because the ceiling was already pretty high for the division. I think, um, like we think back to like the end of 23 where there was that Athena Jody Threat match, and we had the where's that end of 22? Now that I'm thinking about it,
it might have been 22
um,
because that was the match that
yes, yeah,
essentially
it was
launched.
22 because because this was Jamie Hayter and Sheeta
Yeah.
also. Um, and I think that like those were signs that the ceiling was high, right? But
Yes.
the problem was that the floor was pretty low still.
hmm
And
I
so
think I think
I think
that's a good
that's
way to put it.
yeah, and I think that now the floor has caught up to where the ceiling was at one point even. Um, and so I think that now that it's like that, that they can bring in some ceiling raisers into the future. Also, just for the record, Mariah May is now certain on our tier list. Just
Oh
to
yeah,
make that mention, she was a toss-up. She is certain. But yeah, I think that it's time for them to continue bringing in ceiling raisers. I think. Next up, that we're going to talk about on the podcast here is Bayley.
all right, Bayley. So yeah, here's the thing. So obviously we're going to talk about a little bit about Bayley because uh, her contract is supposedly up in what, a year and a half? A year?
Yeah, a year and a half. It's supposed to be late 2026. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people are already kind of, pegging her as someone who's probably going to, you know, be up for discussion on whether or not she's going to leave. And it's interesting because I think her contract is probably going to come up right around the time Mercedes' contract is up.
Um, in theory, yes.
Yeah. So it's a okay. So before we start talking about, how likely is Bayley to jump, let me ask this question. Do we suspect that wherever Mercedes and Bayley end up in a year and a half, it'll be the same company?
I would not take that bet right now.
You'd say no, or
I,
you're
I,
not sure?
I would not take the bet. No.
Okay, because I think that is in part what I think is it's going to be similar, kind of like an Edge and Christian situation where they were like, hey, let's do one last run together. I don't know if Mercedes and Bayley are at the this is my last run edge of their career. I kind of doubt it for Mercedes. Feels like she's got quite a ways to go. Bayley is one that I just don't know where she's at physically and how she's feeling.
Yeah.
Um, Having said that, I do think that more so than ever before, it's more likely that she's going to jump. And we considered her potentially jumping last time that her contract was up.
Yes.
I think it's more likely that she jumps this time.
Yeah, and I think that also makes it that her contract, it seems, might have been a 2-year deal.
Yeah, and the fact that whenever I see someone signing, especially in WWE, signing shorter term deals, usually that's at the talent's insistence.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, you have to ask yourself, why is she requesting shorter term contracts?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and the reason could be that, well, she wants to still have time to do something else. And that would lend to the idea that maybe she's considering jumping. Now,
Yeah.
a year and a half is still a year and a half. A
Yeah.
lot can happen in a year and a half. But I could totally see her potentially, dipping and making her way over to AEW, especially when you think about everything she's already done in WWE and everyone she's already wrestled. Like, what does she have left to do?
Well, also, just to give this a little bit more credence than just, oh yeah, we think that she could go. The reason why she's coming up now. So backtrack 2 months to right before WrestleMania, she did an interview with Chris Van Vliet, where she knew that she was going to get pulled from the WrestleMania tag match by that point. The public did not know until obviously after WrestleMania, and the interview was released after WrestleMania, but it was conducted beforehand, before the public knew that she was getting pulled from this WrestleMania match. During the interview, she was very despondent about it. It felt like that she was kind of accepting. It felt like that there was like a cycle of grief, and that she was in the stage of acceptance about a lot of things. About how WWE had kind of, she was being a good soldier to them, and she was feeling like she wasn't getting a lot of opportunities because, it's easy to tell her no. And she mentioned during that interview that she had about a year and a half left on her contract. It openly just admitted that, just offered that up. Since then, she has increasingly, she has not been featured on TV. She has been wearing merch for other promotions wrestlers. This photo that we have on screen right now is her at the Rhodes Wrestling Academy, which is Dustin Rhodes' academy, not Cody's, Dustin's academy. And Dustin is, he had just resigned with AEW at the end of last year. It looks like it's for a 3-year deal from recent comments that he's made. He is a AEW lifer now. And yeah, it's all strange. It's a lot of smoke. That's going on right now, and the thing is, of course, that is a year and a half away at the same time.
Yeah, and it's like, I think that's the biggest thing. It's like nobody feels comfortable making predictions about what someone is going to do a year and a half away, especially when we think it's a potentially a jump. So in that situation, when I think about Bayley, I personally thought that it was unlikely that she's going to make a jump at this moment.
Well,
That will change.
It's also that the window that we look at is within a year.
Yeah, a lot can happen. So it's
her contract's not up until a year and a half from now.
That's what I mean. It's like, it's a long time.
Well, yeah, that's why I'm saying she shouldn't even be added to the tier list. Okay. She shouldn't be added to the tracker because it's outside the window of the tracker.
Yeah. I will say this. I think we should probably address this now. I think, and I've been guilty of this at times too. It's like, I think a lot of times when we have someone that we think is going to potentially be a big name jump, a lot of people like to talk about it and get them on the list and think about it. And we probably shouldn't be doing that. But we take a look at someone like Bayley. We think she potentially in the next year is probably going to be one of the biggest names we're going to talk about. So I think a lot of people wanted to talk about her. But you're right. If we're looking at, a year and a half, this is outside the range, and they probably shouldn't be on the tier list.
Yeah, there's no reason, in my opinion, why she's now being added to the tracker as unlikely.
I'll be honest, it's something maybe we'll bring up. Maybe it is a thing where we just say, like, listen, if we have confirmation that their contract is longer than 12 months, it's like they don't go on the tier list.
We have some people that folks want to. Let me just ask one question actually about Bayley for you here. Similar question to the Mariah May question. Um, do you think that it will for if WWE were to lose Bayley, do you think that it would take a lot for them to replace her in the aggregate?
I mean, they're not really using her right now, right?
They are not. No.
So I would say there would be, arguably nothing to really replace,
Hmm.
like at this point in time. I mean, is she a good solid veteran to have? Yeah, but they got a few of those. I mean, they got Natalia, obviously, when, they decide to use her. They have um they also have you have to keep in mind they have a number of people that have uh been there a while that are just kind of floating around.
Yeah.
But I don't know that they necessarily need to they don't need to replace her.
Uh-huh.
I think especially the way the women's division has started shaping up lately, where they're started booking it a lot more, or started recruiting in ways a lot more than they used to. Sorry, let me start over. They used to recruit women differently than the way they recruited men. It used to be a thing where they would always, when people talk about the success of the Performance Center, the success of NXT, people love to point to the women's division as the kind of like, oh yeah, see, look at look at the talent they actually built up from scratch, which is something you usually couldn't say about the men's division because almost every single person that was successful in the men's division came from somewhere else. For the women, it was you genuinely could point to like several women that were like ground up prospects. I think that they're moving away from that now. I think that we're seeing less Tiffany Strattons, and we're seeing more Julias and Stephanie Vickers, and we're seeing, and then we see Mariah May going in there too. That's probably going to start becoming the norm. I think that they finally realized that it's not as cost effective to build someone up when they could just you know offer someone a contract who's already built up. But going back to the original point, I don't think they necessarily need to replace Bayley.
We're gonna go on now to our one of our first audience suggested ones for this week is Ace Austin. He has been wrestling with TNA for some time now, and he had done a 1 year renewal last year for his contract, and now that is up, and he has officially informed everybody that he is now a free agent. This is a message from the person that wanted us to discuss Ace Austin. Quote, I'd like to do a heat check on him. I think he's definitely the sort of guy with a big upside that someone might take quite soon. It's clear his feelings that he's got a ceiling in TNA that he's already reached. They didn't give him enough of a nod, kind of X Division reign like Bey. So even with Bey back, they both aren't looking at anything particularly exciting in terms of booking. I also think he's decided to get out of TNA as well, goes on from there. Um, so, what do you think about Ace Austin? I suppose like the first step of this, of course, is they have to be leaving their promotion to go to another one, and Ace has already done that half, right? But the second half of it is they have to be either someone that is going to attract the attention and get interest from major promotions or be noteworthy enough for us to include on our tier list. So, how about we start with the first question there? Do you think that Ace Austin is going to be attracting interest from any of the three major promotions that we look here?
I mean, unlikely. I think maybe like, I mean, I could. He obviously was part of New Japan for a while. Um, I don't know that I see a spot for him in AEW. Really, I really
Mhm.
don't. Maybe WWE would want him in NXT. Uh, but that's a maybe, and that's just speculation. I have nothing to really base that on. I mean, I like Ace Austin, but he just really doesn't. It feels like he's just missing something. I don't know if it's he comes across like he's a charismatic guy, but it also feels kind of like a forced charisma. I I don't want to disparage him or anything, but I don't necessarily see people knocking down the door trying to get Ace Austin in their company right now. At
Yeah,
least not in this environment.
yeah. Um,
That's me.
so, do you think that he should be going on our tracker? Do you think?
I think that I personally would probably not, because I also don't know, is he above the Brian Pillman Jr. line? I yeah, I think he's right at it, to be completely honest. I get that he's like kind of a pushed act in TNA. I get that he is a talented guy. I guess I'm not opposed to him being someone considered, but I don't think it's likely. I don't see anyone picking him up. I don't see a jump happening that we would track.
Understood. So so with if we were to remove the barrier of noteworthiness and just say, what are the odds that within the next year you see Ace Austin being signed by a new promotion and not just staying independent or returning to TNA? What odds would you give that?
I would say somewhere between remote. I'd say remote.
Okay. Well, I mostly agree with you, so that's why I didn't have to say much there. And let's see how our committee went on this. They say it's possible
Mm-hmm.
that he will wind up somewhere, which is our third lowest tier. We have possible, then we have unlikely, and then we have remote. So they feel two tiers higher in probability than you do.
They still definitely feel that he's on the lower end.
Yes, yeah.
And then I think that's important. And maybe that'll shift as time goes on. I mean, he's one, once again, I'm not surprised that there's going to be a lot of variance on him. He's just one where I think that nobody's going to have a really good feel for him.
Hmm.
So I don't necessarily have an issue that we're a little all over the place with him on that. But I just don't think, as long as we're not like putting him at like, probable, I don't have a problem with that.
Next up is another audience suggested one. It's Athena. Here is what the person that nominated her said. Quote, it's a list of explanations even, actually. Number one, Athena's deal is likely up this year, IDK, if that's confirmed, but assuming she signed a 3-year deal, it would be expiring sometime. I think that Fightful has also reported that her deal should be up within the next year. Two, outside of her recent 1-month run on TV with the Owen Hart Cup, Athena has been relegated to ROH. Three, her recent Twitter posts can be just construed as trying to work herself into a story where she is not being planned. Four, despite the rivalry with Mercedes, she was notably absent from TV after losing and hasn't had any follow up on that. So even if there was an idea of her working double duty with All In and ROH, it doesn't seem like it's likely to happen right now. Five, Triple H, her former booker who pushed her heavily, now leads WWE, signing with AEW before he took over. And six, currently looking at the current list, this person feels that she is deserving of at least being a remote chance to jump. Doug, how do you feel about those points that were raised there? About Athena and her future in the Tony Khan sphere.
I think that person made some pretty solid points for at least a remote chance of jumping. I think that those are well reasoned, and I could see it. I also think that when we're just talking about a remote chance, I have no problem. I mean, she's a big prospect right now. I mean, I think it's really, I've said this before, but I think that, years from now, we need to really study what Athena did in Ring of Honor, because it's impressive how she was able to stay as over as she did and as relevant as she did, while essentially hiding
Mm.
and being the best women's wrestler by some account, uh, without ever really setting foot out on TV. Um, outside of, obviously the Owen and things like that. But it's like it's really, really impressive what they've done with her. Um, I do think going back, I want to look back like, a couple months from now and just see specifically, I want to see how we feel about her losing in the Owen and if that was worth it, 6 months from now. But I do think that there is a remote chance that she may jump. And once again, though, we need to talk about what would that mean. To me, the only option would be WWE. Could she go there? Is there something to this idea that, oh, bad man gone, Triple H is there now. I'll be presented a little better. I suppose, but I also feel like at this point in time, they would need to offer her, some money to go back there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like, so also to give some like counter, I suppose, to the concept. She is 36, which
Yep.
for the in-ring shape she is in doesn't show. I don't think at all. Um, she performs exceptionally well. Not that 36 is old, at all. But just to make note.
Yeah.
Um,
To be clear, I am 40, and I can imagine it being very, very difficult doing some of the stuff that they do.
um, so the thing that's interesting to me is that the last time that she was in WWE, she did go to the main roster. She wasn't used a lot on the main roster, but she did make her way up to the main roster.
Yes.
If she were signed to WWE today, disregarding that historical note, do you think that they would put her on NXT or a main roster immediately?
NXT. I need to think about it.
And that's why I think that this is very remote.
But do I think that they would pay her main roster money? Because I think that's the
No.
other thing we got to keep in mind. A lot more people that are we're now seeing what Ricky Starks apparently was making
So
main
those
roster money
but all of those deals, why are they getting paid main roster money?
because they're eventually going to the main roster.
Correct. It's not that they are going to stay in NXT. The expectation is not an NXT deal. None of them are actually NXT deals. They're all main roster contracts that they're just optioning to NXT. So like that's why Jordynne Grace has a main roster contract and she is just working in NXT right now. It's not that she has an NXT contract.
That's valid. That's fair.
Yeah.
And also, it's a thing where once again they want to just we hear it all the time. They want to talk about how all these talent went through NXT. So they want to give them a little pit stop just so they can put that on the checkbox.
Yeah. So yeah, with Athena, I understand the question marks about her usage in AEW. I think that the unfortunate thing about Athena is that she is stuck in a bit of a catch-22 scenario where it's if you take Athena out of ROH, who replaces her? And the answer is
Nobody.
And that's a problem for her and for AEW.
All right. Let me ask you this though.
Okay, Moneyball this.
And this is gonna but here's the thing. And this is gonna make some people mad maybe.
Okay.
If you take Athena out of Ring of Honor,
Yeah.
is Ring of Honor any different today than it is tomorrow?
Yes.
In what way?
I probably am not watching the pay-per-views.
Okay. So
I think a lot of people wouldn't, right?
okay, perhaps. Do we know that there are a lot of people watching the pay-per-views now?
I mean, yeah, there's enough for it to continue as a company.
Yeah. But a lot of those are just on, I mean, okay, refresh my memory. They moved a lot of them to just the Honor Club.
You now get the pay-per-views for free via Honor Club.
Yes. So I mean, I don't even know what
Okay. The reason why people have subscription for Ring of Honor now is two reasons. One, they like women's wrestling. Two, they like Lucha Libre.
Or three. The reason I have it because I subscribed to it and I just never canceled it.
There's that too. But like if you actively are using if you're actively watching the Ring of Honor product every week, those are the two things that you're watching it for. Is you're not watching it for lower card men's wrestling. Like I love Serpentico, he's funny, but people aren't probably not like going out of their way to get the Ring of Honor subscription for him. I could be wrong though. People bring your snakes up and chat. Don't you know what phrasing? Um, um, but yeah, no, like I think that like Athena is and they have a back catalog, yeah, and that is cool. I don't know if it's necessarily worth $10 a month for the back catalog, but I think that it's worth it for the back catalog and some weekly lucha libre and hard hitting 20-minute women's wrestling and the quarterly pay-per-views, you know, like that. And then it becomes worth it because then you have what, $10 a month, $120 a year, $40 for every pay-per-view. Just off of the back right there, you're not feeling like you're getting, you know, you don't feel like you feel like $40 is worth enough, right? For a pay-per-view every 3 months just on its own, you know? And then if you're doing that and you're getting back catalog and you're getting a weekly that, you know, you might not watch all the time, but like when, you know, they have a cool Lucha Libre match, you're going to, you know, pop it on and just watch that match at the very least, you know, that's something, you know? But like that is a lot to put on then Athena, where she is at least one or two of those factors there, right? So if you pull Athena from that equation, now what is Ring of Honor's women's division? You know, who is the person that, you know, fills the gap for Athena? And the answer is, well, maybe Ring of Honor doesn't exist anymore. You know, like she is that integral now to Ring of Honor that they don't have a replacement. Like, I don't know how you build her in the aggregate, as they say.
I don't think you do. And I do think that I think Athena has been built up to such an extent quietly in Ring of Honor that, you know, we joke about this idea that Tony fumbled. You know, for the most part, it's just like, okay, whatever, it's nonsense. Because I don't think there's really any recent examples where I would say Tony fumbled. But if he spent like 2 years building her up in Ring of Honor, making her like this like mythical creature, so to speak, that just cannot be beaten, and you only see her once in a while, and then suddenly he loses her to the competition after he spent all this time like building her up. That would be a fumble. I would agree with that. That would be a massive fumble. I don't necessarily agree so much about like, oh, poor Ring of Honor, because I think they've done a bad job with Ring of Honor from the start. I don't think it should have been a weekly show. At the very least, it should just been a monthly show. Where like every month they have like a 3-hour show. This is Ring of Honor. We'll continue the storylines from last month. It would be it would make it different in the sense you don't have to tune in every week. And I think that it would almost kind of fill the void that PWG maybe left. Like that's how I would have booked it, as a PWG.
PWG doesn't exist in my mind. As somebody that didn't have a tape trader culture, like PWG is not real.
Yeah. But my point though still stands. It's just like I feel like Ring of Honor is not different enough to exist.
Yeah.
And the fact that there's probably like what? Okay, let's be honest. How many Honor Club subscribers do you think there actually are? Do you think it is 5 figures?
I am always bad about understanding what 5 figures means.
Like at least 10,000.
Yes.
See, I don't think it is. I think it might be less than 10,000.
I think it's more than 10,000.
Yeah. And well, so let's say it's 20,000.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what? $240,000 a month.
240 yeah.
So if it's $10 a month, that's $200,000 a month. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know that you're going to get a whole bunch of people canceling just because Athena left.
No, I think that is part of the draw.
It is.
Um, we have an interesting comment here in chat from TC. If Athena gets called up with all the new signings, is she lost in the shuffle?
I don't think so. I think that she's I think she's I think they've done, as I said, I think they've done a really good job of building up her aura and making her a major character in Ring of Honor and in wrestling in general. So much though that people openly were acknowledging that she's like one of the greatest women's wrestlers during this time, during the honestly the bulk of AEW's time where, you know, things weren't that great for the women's division in a lot of ways. So I think that if they moved her up, she would probably push other people down. I mean, I don't see her getting lost in the shuffle. I don't think that she's like Deonna Purrazzo, or Thunder Rosa or Britt Baker who just get lost. I think that she's a step above them.
Well, where are we going to put her on the tier list? Are we going to put Athena on the tier list?
I don't have a problem putting her at remote. I really don't. Like,
Well, then we'll do that.
Okay.
The final one that's an audience edition is Masha Slamovich. It was reported by Fightful in January that she re-signed with TNA last summer. Now, TNA's contracts recently have been a variable length, so it's not guaranteed that that really necessarily means any kind of length, but it means that she's still under contract at least through this summer, possibly longer than that. I would say probably longer than that, considering she is currently the Knockouts World Champion. So I would highly doubt that they would give their belt to someone so soon away from leaving forever. She has notably not had any matches in NXT proper during the TNA crossovers, and we've noticed before that some of the people that have been like that, such as Speedball Mike Bayley and Josh Alexander, decide to leave. Doug, do you think that there is any smoke to Masha Slamovich? Because I don't think there's any fire here.
Well, here's the thing. Could there be this situation where she's going to AEW in the same way that Mike Bayley did?
That is what I think that this theory is about.
And if that's the case, then sure, I guess I could see the argument. However, and maybe we're gonna have this discussion at some point, and that's because I know we've had issues with like Joe Hendry, for example, where we weren't exactly sure where his contract ended. Then we were getting weird mixed answers. Some said it was going to be up soon. Some said it was going to be, multiple years or over a year. And for her, do we have a definitive date on when her contract is, or at least a time frame?
First, I'll mention on the Joe Hendry. The answer that we were getting from people like Sean Ross Sapp was some time left, and now we know that when he said some time left, he meant within the year. So I feel like when somebody says a phrasing like that I'm going to take it a little bit more with a grain of salt in the future. But with Masha, we have no word on the length of her contract at all. Okay. No, nothing. Just the fact that she resigned within the past year.
Okay. So,
and we have we don't have any word or inklings that there's interest from WWE. Obviously, we know that with Joe Hendry as a comparison point. We don't know if there is any interest from her of leaving. We know there was with Joe Hendry. And then with AEW or Stardom or anything like that, we don't know of any interest there either, or of any mutualized interest there.
All right. So then we've talked this out, and I was like, I'm working it out in my head and here how I want to approach this. So Masha, I think it's fair to say, is one of the top women in TNA, correct?
She is the top woman in TNA. Even.
Yeah. So it's fair to say she's one of the top women in TNA.
Well, yeah.
Yes. Okay. So she's one of the top women in TNA. She's someone that is currently under contract. It's potentially under a year at this point.
Potentially.
We don't know, but it's potentially under a year.
Potentially over also.
Also potentially over. And we know that she is doing something with the way that she's being booked that could indicate that she could follow in someone else's footsteps and leave to go to another promotion.
Or it could be that the tea leaf reading of her not doing any shows on. She has worked with NXT talent. She has just never appeared on NXT. The tea leaf reading about that is people think that that means that the person doesn't want to stay in TNA.
Yeah. I think that I would ignore that whole booking aspect. I think that that's reading too much into things, and we don't know what that actually means. So to me, I'm looking at two things. One, her contract length, and two,
current usage.
Another, yeah, would it, or not even so current usage, would another company want her, or do I see value in another company grabbing her, or do another company see value in her? Do I think AEW would see value in Masha Slamovich? Yeah, I do. Do I think that WWE would see value in Masha Slamovich? Yeah. Do I see her going to Stardom? Not really. But I know for a fact, is her contract potentially up within a year? Potentially. For that reason, I don't necessarily have a problem putting her at remote. Now, I think that going forward, we need to maybe discuss this idea of if we know for a fact that someone's contract is a year or more, I think we should probably discuss just unilaterally removing them.
Yeah.
I think I don't have a problem with doing that, where it's like, hey, once we like, if some report or news item comes out that says, so and so has 18 months left on the contract, I think that gives us carte blanche to go ahead and just take them off the tier tracker.
Yeah, I would say the only pieces that I would say are different in that regard. If we have somebody in WWE, and I don't love this scenario. Well, like with WWE, the scenario is, what if the person gets released? And that is a very negative scenario to have to think through. With AEW, it's a positive scenario. What if this person asks for their release? And that happens. AEW does release people when requests to be released. WWE doesn't do that. So with
they have, just not lately.
Just not lately. With TNA, with somebody like that, I think that like Joe Hendry is the example essentially, and I think that we were right to put him on when we did, considering everything we knew at the time, and then now we have been vindicated by putting him on when we did.
Well, let's think. I don't have a problem with someone being on the tier list when we're not 100% sure on the date. I just think that, like, if we know for a fact that it's like 18 months out.
If it's 18 months out and we don't have any inklings that the person wants to leave.
Yeah, but I'm saying
like we knew that Joe Hendry's probably going to leave. We already felt that, right?
Yes.
So like it didn't matter if his contract was over a year. We knew, and we see him going on WWE TV and all those things, and we didn't know what his contract length was necessarily, and then it came out, oh yeah, his contract is done within a year, and we're like, cool, great, everything matched up. With Masha, there is nothing indicating that she's trying to leave TNA.
It's not, but if she does have, here's the thing, and that's why I think it's fine having her at remote if the people want to vote for her at remote, because if it's still under a year potentially, I get it. And she's, once again, she's one of the top women in TNA. That kind of puts a target on your back from the top two companies. I understand wanting to, I could accept that. But if we get if we get some report that says that she, signed a 2-year deal like, 3 months ago, then I think we have to take her off.
So that all being said, how do you feel about her being put in unlikely by our committee?
I think that's too high.
Yeah.
I think I would say we're looking at remote, because once again, she just signed a contract and we don't exactly know the length. TNA contracts, I'm not stunned if they're a year.
Yeah.
So I lean towards thinking they're a year. So for me, I would think that she's probably under the 12 months.
I
But
I disagree with the year length thing just because I would if I was TNA, I wouldn't sign somebody for a year and then within that year give them the world title. But,
well,
TNA.
yeah, we don't know. And then also, I think I think that I think that there are people who would be interested in bringing her in either in AEW or WWE, but we haven't heard anything about that. I mean, she's a top, she's the champion in TNA, so one would think that there's going to be some interest.
Yeah.
If you're, pushed that well. Um, but we just haven't heard anything yet. So I would go remote. I really don't have a problem with her being on the tier list. Um, with the caveat that we still have the knowledge that or the lack of knowledge on her contract length.
Here's
Like
some
if she has 9 months left, she should be on the tier list.
I mean, I think that there are people that we know their contract is even less than that, and we don't have on the tier list because either we have so little doubt that they're going to leave, or that they're not noteworthy enough to put on.
But I think that's fine. Okay, can you give me an example one?
Of some Pete Dunne.
Okay, so here's the thing, Pete Dunne. If first of all, I would vote on Pete Dunne. I would have a discussion on Pete Dunne. Um, I think that he is, yeah, I think he's already in like one of the main companies making a lot of money. I think that's different than someone who's in TNA.
Well, I mean, we know that he wants to stay in WWE also.
And that too.
There's no point. There's no point.
There's other variables with him.
Yeah.
And then those are things we don't know with Masha. So that's why I think it's a little different.
But like it's like the absence of evidence isn't evidence. And that it's trying to will the absence of evidence into becoming evidence with Masha, it sounds like.
I suppose, but I also just feel like especially with TNA, it's like we don't like I feel like it's fair to assume that the people that are in TNA for, with all due respect to TNA, don't want to spend their entire careers in TNA. That may not be true.
I don't know. I think that there are people that love TNA.
There may be, but it's also, some of those people were like Jordan Grace. It's like, I don't know.
Like, I think Josh Alexander would have stayed in TNA forever if Scott D'Amore didn't leave.
Yeah.
So here are some.
This is why we have these discussions. This is part of this.
Here are some
part of the process.
Here are some quick hitters for us, just to get through these names rather quickly. We have AJ Styles is dropping down a tier from unlikely to remote. How do you feel about that one?
I think that's correct. I don't feel like talking about AJ Styles right now.
Bea Priestley is going to stay as a probable, so above the toss-up line. Do you feel like that's right still?
Yes.
Bishop Dyer, the former Baron Corbin, he goes down from a toss-up to a remote chance. I think that might still be too high at this point for Bishop Dyer.
I strongly considered and here's the thing, I had to submit to my ballot twice. I may have said remove one time and remote the other time because I went back and forth on this one, and I'm fine with remote. I would have been fine taking them off too.
Deonna Purrazzo is coming back to our tier list here. She wasn't listed for quite some time since she joined AEW. She is going to be put in the unlikely tier. The reason why on this one, and this is a similar thing for me, is that we know that her contract is well over a year remaining on it. She appears to be displeased on social media, but that could be kayfabe. We don't know. The other factor with it, though, is that if we were to take at face value displeasure, AEW does release people from contracts if they request it. So that's why I'm not as razzled by adding Deonna Purrazzo to the tier list when we think that she has more than a year left on her contract, or we know that she has more than a year left on her contract. But I think that with the possibility that she would want to get asked, she would ask for her release, similar to Danhausen. I don't have any issue with putting her on the tier list. I don't think that she should be as high as she is, but I don't have any problem with it.
Yeah, because I just don't think that, you know, the question is she going to go to Stardom?
Yeah, that's the
Is
other.
she going to go back to WWE?
Or
It's
TNA. Like, it's like, yeah, at that point, it's like, then there becomes a secondary question of where does she even go?
Yeah. That to me, that's almost the primary question with her.
Yeah.
Because it's like when we're talking about jumps, we're talking about potentially going to, you know, WWE, Stardom, AEW, like those are the three that would be the locations for her that we would really consider. And she was in WWE. She kind of burnt out. She did Stardom for a bit, had a little tour there. She's not going back. I don't think she's going back there. She's in AEW, didn't do that great. Sometimes it's like the only place she really did great was in TNA.
Yeah.
And she was a, she was
a world champion.
Yeah, but it's also like, sometimes you're just the big fish in the little pond. And I think that was kind of the situation with TNA, and maybe that's her ceiling. And I think she has a role. I mean, here's the thing. There's nothing wrong with being a, lower mid-carder in AEW. I mean, I wish we had more of that and more accepting of that. Like when I look at the Outrunners, I think that was a really great act until they started winning. And it's like I feel like hopefully that happened. They got the frat party from the Ring of Honor guys. Like I hope they don't start pushing them and making them win, because sometimes like these people just need to. Sometimes you just need jobbers.
That reminds me of people. Some people had a negative reaction to the length of match for the Sons of Texas versus Hurt Syndicate. It was like 12 minutes. I think that's totally fine length of match, considering that like in kayfabe it is Dustin Rhodes and Sammy Guevara. Like, we know out kayfabe that they're very talented people. In kayfabe, they are World Tag Team Champions of another promotion. Makes total sense. What didn't make sense is that the Outrunners lasted only 4 minutes shorter than these two guys. Like, Outrunners match should have been like a squash in like 2 minutes. Yeah. They should have built up them from a few matches. Like they squeak through with a team that you don't expect, and then they trounce some jobber team, and then they just get trounced. Like that's the rhythm. They shouldn't have a competitive unless you do like the you misunderestimated me kind of a trope. They shouldn't have a very competitive match with the Hurt Syndicate, and that's not saying that they are not successful. I think that's still successful for them.
Yeah, you just want to avoid a situation where all your talent is the blob, and like everyone is having like 12-minute matches with everyone else, and every single time that the champs win, there could have been a chance that they lose, because sometimes they should just trounce these people.
Yeah.
I don't think they do that nearly enough.
And then last on here as a quick hit is Zozay. He goes up from a toss-up to likely. This is due to reports that the reason why he's not going all the way up to certain, for some people that know what this report is that it is reported that he is expected to sign with WWE in September. I know that is why it's kind of odd phrasing. He did the UK tryout with WWE back in March when they came through Europe. He impressed WWE enough that he was offered a contract, and it sounds like that I don't know why he's waiting, might have other contract commitments, and why he has to wait until September with it. Interesting note from all of this as well was that there was a report yesterday that Luke Jacobs expected to get a contract offer from WWE, and WWE did not offer him a contract, which I think is spicy of WWE.
Well, listen, I believe the report. I suspect that Zozay will be popping up eventually, and that's fine. So I think we're going likely with him now, right?
Yeah, we're going likely and not certain because of the timetable involved with it. And the phrasing was that he hasn't signed yet either.
Yeah. It's weird the way they're operating with that. I will say that.
Yeah, it feels like that NXT Europe isn't actually happening and that it's vaporware, just like Revolution 2 was.
No, it's happening, man. It's happening.
Well, it is now, but it sounds like that there was Sean Ross Sapp on one of his streams, he didn't go into detail on this. He alluded to it, and he said that he was going to mention it later, and then he didn't. About that, there were women's talent in WWE that told him that if they would rather be able to go to the Beyonce concert across the street than get booked for Evolution show.
Yep,
And
I did see that.
that is sad. Like, oh my god, like this is the like it. I saw the report yesterday too that WWE PR is realizing that they made a mistake by counter programming AEW now, because now the
what happened? Say that again.
WWE internally are admitting that they made a PR mistake by counter programming AEW as much as they have been, because of this weekend. Nobody's talking about Battleground. They realize that first, right? They realize that nobody's talking about Battleground. Nobody watched it, it seems. Like every single metric of like casual viewership to hardcore kind of viewers. Like if you look at on Reddit, on the Squared Circle subreddit, you could see the amount of comments for the post-show thread for the two shows. It was like 3 or 4 to 1 for Double or Nothing. You look at Cage Match, the most reviewed match for Battleground has less reviews than the least reviewed match for Double or Nothing. You look at every reviews podcast and YouTube show, nobody reviewed Battleground. Everybody reviewed Double or Nothing. A lot of the people that were even WWE fans just admitted, yeah, I'm not going to watch it. Like they lost. Like they served up NXT on a platter to be fodder, and they lost. And now when they're looking at this weekend with All In, it's like people are saying that they look petty because they, like, originally All In was scheduled for the 12th, and then they added a Saturday Night's Main Event on it to counter program it, right? And AEW then moved the show to earlier in the day. And now WWE is like, okay, yeah, well, what we're going to do is we're going to counter program that with a new show at a 1,000 cap venue of NXT.
Yeah.
And
well, here's the thing.
Yeah.
Go ahead. So get going.
Yeah, no, and it's also funny because it's possible now that because of how many matches they put on a pay-per-view card. So I looked at the first Revolution show. How many matches do you think there were in 2018 at Revolution? I mean, at Evolution.
At Evolution?
Yeah, how many matches total, including a dark? There's one dark match.
I'm say 9.
There were 8, so you're close.
Okay.
Yeah. How many performers do you think there were on the entire card? There was one battle royale.
Yeah, I'll say I'm sure they had some. That was a get everybody on the card kind of show. So yeah. I don't know. I couldn't even maybe guess like 80.
There were 40.
Yeah, 40.
14 of which are still signed on to WWE as regular performers. 9 of which are performing elsewhere now actively.
Okay.
The other half are all retired or still on Legends contracts. There is actually a match on that card that I saw. It was Trish and Lita versus Mickie James and Alicia Fox, which at the time even felt like a Legends match, and now it still could be. Like nobody would bat an eye if that match happened again, you know.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing to me is that if they are only doing 4 or 5 matches on Evolution 2, because that's what they do nowadays, right? And one of them is is some kind of battle royal 20-person match. Then we're looking at like under 30 performers of women on that card, right?
Right.
What I'm saying is that Tony should be spicy and do he should do a casino gauntlet match of women on All In.
He might.
Breaking news. R-Truth has announced he is leaving WWE when his contract is up.
Really?
Yep.
Leaving as in leaving the company or retiring?
He just says leaving.
Huh. How old is he? Like close to, he's over 50, right?
Somewhere around there. Yeah, here's the tweet from him. I'm sorry to inform you all. I just got released from WWE. I want to thank WWE for the ride, but mostly I want to thank each and every one of you. I'm caps locking. He did. Who was along for the ride. Thank you all for the love, support, and appreciation you have given me over the years. Thank you. Then Sean Rossap tweets, the R-Truth tweet is accurate, not a hacker accident. He will be leaving WWE when his deal expires. So there is some disagreement there where R-Truth says that he has been released, and Sean Ross Sapp is saying he will leave when his deal gets expires. I am going to say that R-Truth might know more than Sean Ross Sapp on that, but it's possible that he's just phrasing it like that because then it makes him sound better, you know?
Yeah. Here's the other thing. When you okay, I feel like released has just become like the catch-all word for not being resigned.
Not staying with the company.
I would not be surprised if his contract is expiring. He's just using
and you
the
just
term
informed,
released.
yeah.
Yeah, that's I'm surprised.
I mean, very surprised.
I mean, I guess that because then he has had a high profile match.
He was the main event of Saturday Night's main event, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And then now he's But you know what though? He's also probably ran his course like a decade ago. And it could just be that maybe they're whatever they're paying him, they don't want to pay him anymore, and they want to use that money elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'm surprised, but I'm also not like shocked.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. We'll talk about him, I guess, next week, I suppose. But I don't know. I don't know where old R-Truth goes.
So yeah, go ahead.
He was he was the he was the first African American NWA champion.
NWA, yes, yeah. Although, was WCW separate from NWA by the point that Ron Simmons won?
I think it was.
Okay. Ron Simmons is the first recorded, recognized Black World Champion of any promotion. But yeah. I was thinking about that one, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Killing
50. He's 53.
Yeah. I mean, he doesn't have to retire because he still is. People love him still, but like, I don't know what. We'll think about it for next week, but I don't know where he would end up. Unless you have him as a fun TNA revival contract.
I think he's probably. Yeah, I would think TNA is probably where he would land.
You know what? Also with that, for the role that he would play, I think AEW could sign him.
I don't see it.
If you had him do exactly what he has been doing in WWE, but you make him slightly more serious, I don't know.
I mean, I'll say this: I didn't see AEW bring in Danhausen.
Yeah,
and they brought him in.
Well,
so
here's another one for you. Did you think that Mark Briscoe would be as over as a serious performer as he is?
So you're saying just have R-Truth be like the Mark Briscoe, be another Mark Briscoe?
Essentially, he would be a slightly more comedic, more losing Mark Briscoe, yeah. Like, you just throw him into the conglomeration and you got a stew. And Jay Uso versus Logan Paul was the main event of Saturday Night's main event. I'm sorry, I forgot that match existed for some reason. I just remember the R-Truth dressed as John Cena match. That is legitimately what happened. I don't know if you watched the match, Doug.
I did not.
John Cena comes out. He doesn't have a video package for himself. He just has the music playing. it's kind of weird because like his whole thing is like I'm trying to ruin professional wrestling, but I'm still going to come out to my theme song. It's kind of weird. He goes out to the ring, and then his theme song kicks off again, and R-Truth comes out dressed as John Cena, and he does the match as John Cena. Like, he does all of the John Cena moves. It is actually kind of funny, but at the same time, I understand why Dave Meltzer gave it like a 1.25 star rating. I thought it was my favorite of the John Cena matches that I've seen of this recent run of John Cena, but I understand why somebody might say that this was not a good match.
Yeah.
So looking at our updated free agency tracker for the world of professional wrestling, up in the certain tier, we have Hikuleo and Mariah May. Do you think Mariah May debuts before Hikuleo?
Oh, honestly, yeah, I think he does.
Okay.
I think he does.
Okay. Who is that likely there if you have it open?
I do have it open. Next, for likely, we would have Ninja Mac and Zozaya.
How are you feeling about Ninja Knack coming off of the Best Super Juniors?
I think I think he did very well in terms of getting his going viral a little bit and having some big moments. What did his record end with? He was kind of, let me see. Let me pull up his record right now.
I remember that this year was very odd with Best Super Juniors because it felt like they were trying to make everybody have a good record.
Yeah. Sometimes they do that where you get like these brackets where it's still at the end and like everyone has like the same amount of points. You just need one person to break through and cut them all. Let's see. All right, so 2025. He is
Yeah, his entire block, everybody has either 10 or 8 points.
10 or 8. Yeah, he was in that
in the 8. He was in the
way.
8 tier of the 10 or 8. Yeah, it was
for second.
It was weird because the way that they did it, I remember this now because I was so confused by it. They just like did tiebreakers for both of them. They didn't do semifinal matches for both blocks. So it was just whoever had the tiebreaker in both blocks just won their block. So despite that there is a 5-way tie at the head of block A, they were just like, Fujita wins.
I was say you need Cambridge Analytica to break that down.
So yeah, I think that like they were very cognizant, it felt like this year, about trying to make everybody look good. And he was the viral sensation of the year. So I think that there still is very good odds that he will get a long-term contract with New Japan out of this. Probable tier, we think that there's more likely than not, we're going to see Bea Priestley, Joe Hendry, Rio, that is the British wrestler Rio, Alex Windsor, and Dakota Kai end up somewhere soon.
Sorry, a little yawn there. All right. For toss-up, we have Cedric Alexander, Danhausen, Michael Oku, Gigi Dolan, Shayna Baszler. That's an interesting list of 5 right there.
Yeah, I feel like one name in there is sticking out a bit more than the others, actually. And we might disagree about who that name is, but I think it's Cedric Alexander is sticking out of that group now.
You think he's not going?
I think that the theorem of if you try to make something happen on the indies, it means that it's not happening on TV.
Yeah, I was thinking the exact same thing, actually.
Down at Possible, we have Alexander Hammerstone, Miyu Yamashita, and Ace Austin.
Yep.
That feels right.
That does. And then for Unlikely, we have Beth Phoenix, Gabe Kidd, Leon Slater, Persephone, Saraya, Shinsuke Nakamura, Sari, Bayley, Deonna Purrazzo, Masha Slamovich. We need to clean this one up.
Yeah, that one's a little bit messy.
Yeah, we got some people on there I don't think need to be on there anymore.
And down in the remote tier, we have Utami Hayashi Shida, Nixon Newell, Sami Zayn, Kofi Kingston, and Xavier Woods, Matt Cardona, Samantha Irvin, AJ Styles, Athena, and Bishop Dyer. I think around half of those I feel good about sticking around.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, there are a few of those that I think like Time is ticking, ticking, ticking on whether or not they're going to head somewhere.
Interesting.
So
So
that
what is this? Gunther deleted all his posts over the last 3 years. Am I seeing that right now?
where's that from?
Maybe it's something else. I don't know. I probably shouldn't be talking about something that I just randomly come across on Twitter. Ignore that. I don't know what it is. It's probably nothing.
So, as a reminder, if you would like to have us discuss folks on the podcast like we did today with a few people, Ace Austin, Athena, and Masha Slamovich, you can subscribe to us on Substack, wrestlewatch.substack.com. You will receive a link to our submission form where you can suggest names for us to discuss here every week on the WrestleWatch Podcast. We also have long-form articles there, such as this week we did a report card article about Mercedes Moné, Kazuchika Okada, and Julia. And we also had our match of the month for April announced. And that match was Saya Kamitani versus Tam Nakano. How do you feel about that being the match of the month?
Read it one more time.
Yeah, so our top 5 for this past month, for April, I should say, was Saya Kamitani versus Tam Nakano. Number 2 was Will Ospreay versus Konosuke Takeshita. Number 3 was the triple threat of Kenny Omega, Speedball Mike Bayley versus Ricochet from Dynasty. Number 4 was Athena versus Mercedes Moné. And number 5 was the triple threat from WrestleMania of Io Sky versus Rhea Ripley versus Bianca Belair.
Those all sound really solid. I think the Io Bianca Belair, I think that match, honestly, I think it deserves a little bit more praise than it's getting. I feel like it got lost in the last month.
I agree with that. I think that, like, for 2 reasons. One was that I think the rest of WrestleMania was so lackluster that night that it made people forget how good that match was.
Yeah, which is unfortunate. But it's like I do think about that, and it's like, oh yeah, that happened at one point.
Yeah, like I think that as far as a triple threat match goes, I think that was perfectly executed for the means of we're not going to do the triple threat as no DQ trope.
Yeah,
like they did not use that trope whatsoever the entire match. Like the Kenny Omega Ricochet Speedball match, it didn't really use it. There was like some moments where they were like outside the ring for very extended periods of time and all those kinds of things, but they didn't really use weapons. Whereas the WrestleMania women's match, they just stayed in the ring the entire time and it was endlessly flowing. And I thought that it was rather deserving to be in the top 5. I do think that it is I think it's fairly ranked among those matches there. I think that Saya Kamitani versus Tam Nakano, I think in ring, some could make the argument that it's not the best in ring match, but I think from a storytelling perspective, I think that like you could watch that match without having followed the story whatsoever beforehand and you would still cry at the end of the match. And I think that is the mark of that this is a very excellent affair.
I agree. All right. Well, I think we did pretty well here.
Yeah.
Good discussion. Got a lot in. I think we needed to have a little bit longer one. There was a lot to talk about this week.
Yeah, so this has been this week's episode of the WrestleWatch Free Agency podcast. Thank you all for listening. If you're not already subscribed here on YouTube, please give us a like and a comment. It helps the algorithm if you're listening to us on a podcast catcher. Make sure that you're subscribed there. And until next time, what do you want to say, Doug? Until next time.
Until next time, I am Doug.
Until next time, he is Doug. Have a good night, everybody.
Yeah.